Hey all, a quick note before we dive into this episode. This is not a typical Friday recap episode. I am actually in Texas right now for Consensus. So this is a conversation that I had with Gmoney, the one and only. We get into all sorts of fun topics, Admit One being the big one. Admit One is one of the hottest NFT projects right now. Gmoney launched it and he explains it. And we talk about what's happening in the market these days, his investing strategy and how he looks at things, and a little bit of his journey to where he is today. I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs, a very special episode. In the studio with me today, I have the one and only Gmoney. I believe this is the first time I've had like a live cartoon that I've interviewed. I've had anonymous people who just didn't go on camera, but you're next level tech here, Gmoney. For anybody who's listening on the podcast, you should tune into the YouTube to see Gmoney. Gmoney, most of you probably know, you almost certainly follow him on Twitter. He is a trader, investor, a leading thinker in the NFT space, just general futurist, and of course the founder of Admit One, which is one of, if not the hottest project. I think Goblin Town is probably rivaling you at the moment in NFTs, and we will talk all about Admit One. I'm really excited to pick your brain more on it and just talk about your journey in the space.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me on. I'm super excited. I think this will be a fun combo.
Absolutely. And you brought Adidas into the space. You're in Puerto Rico. Those are other things I want to talk to you about. I was in Puerto Rico recently, going to be releasing some content about Puerto Rico and the NFT scene there, which you've had a really big, amazing impact in. So we'll talk about that as well. Before we get into any of this, though, we do have to hear a word from our wonderful sponsors.
RARIBLE is the NFT platform that's leading the charge into the multi-chain universe ahead of us. Available on Flow, Tezos, Polygon, and of course, Ethereum, RARIBLE is the perfect place for NFT newcomers, profile picture collectors, and experienced NFT traders. RARIBLE has a variety of NFT features that set it apart from other NFT marketplaces. They have a native messaging function allowing you to DM your friends or haggle with sellers. They also have a mobile app on iOS and Android with a built-in NFT portfolio tracker tool, so you can easily check the value of your digital art portfolio. RARIBLE is built on the RARIBLE protocol, a multi-purpose, open source, and community-governed NFT protocol that helps build products and services across the NFT ecosystem, including white label marketplaces tailored to specific NFT communities. So go to rarible.com and start discovering and trading NFTs, putting in floor bids to join PFP communities, and DM with some brand new internet friends. Living a bankless life requires taking control over your own private keys. And that's why so many in the Bankless Nation already have their Ledger hardware wallet. And brand new to the Ledger lineup of hardware wallets is the Ledger Nano S Plus, a huge upgrade to the world's most popular hardware wallet. With more memory and a larger screen, the Nano S Plus makes it easy to navigate and verify your transactions. And the paired Ledger Live desktop app gives you increased transparency as to what is about to happen with your NFT. What you see is what you sign. The Nano S Plus gives you the smoothest possible user experience while you're doing all of your crypto things. So go to the Ledger website to check out the features of the new Ledger Nano S Plus and join the waitlist to get yours. And don't forget about the Crypto Life card, also powered by Ledger. The CL card is a crypto debit card that hooks right into the Ledger Live app, right next to all the DeFi apps and services that you're already used to doing, like swapping tokens and staking. So if you don't have a Ledger hardware wallet, go to ledger.com, grab a Ledger, and take control over your crypto.
All right, G. So for folks who don't maybe know, I feel like you really hit the NFT scene, and you can correct me if this is wrong, but in January of last year, when you wrote this long thread about why you spent 140 ETH on your Ape CryptoPunk, for which you are now very well known. And at that point, I think it was like the most expensive NFT purchase that had happened. And you wrote this really awesome thread explaining it. Was that your like intro to the NFT world as far as like them really knowing you?
No, so it was at the time it was the most amount spent on a CryptoPunk.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were higher prices that people were going for, but no CryptoPunk sales. That wasn't my entry into it. That was kind of maybe my public entry into it, right?
Okay, because you'd been buying Chromie Squiggles. I know you'd bought a bunch of things.
I was in the Discords. I was talking to people. I was tweeting a little bit. But really, like nobody really, I think when I wrote that thread, I probably had like 50 followers or something. I wasn't a really like known person in the space. And so because what ended up happening to me was in like November, December of 2020, I I specifically remember, I think it was the night of the Beeple Every Day, right? The open edition. It was a 7-minute open edition. And I remember I was out to dinner with like 7 or 8 crypto people. And I was like, I brought my laptop. I'm like, I'm going out to my car to mint this thing during dinner. But like, I want to be at dinner hanging out with people. But I think, let's say the mint was like at 7 p.m. Eastern. I don't remember the exact time, but we met like an hour before. And in that hour before, I was red pilling everybody at the table on NFTs. And these were like crypto native people that were like big in DeFi, big in the ERC20 tokens, and like really deep in the space. And when we sat down, they were like, NFTs are stupid. And within like 20 or 30 minutes, I had convinced them to the point where I think most of the people at that dinner bought at least one Beeple.
Oh my gosh.
But they were like, they went from thinking NFTs are stupid to, being like, oh, hey, I'll take a flyer on this NFT that this idiot is pushing me. And I remember I ran out and I was just minting for like 7 minutes the entire time, just mint, refresh, the entire time. And after that dinner, I was like, okay, like I had my pitch down where I could convince these people going from NFTs are stupid to, okay, NFTs might hold some value. I'm willing to, and some people, I remember that night, people were like, I don't think that there's any value there, but I understand why you might think that. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's enough. Right.
That's progress.
And then, as I was like thinking about it, I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to go around from dinner party to dinner party, red pilling like 6 to 7 people at a time, like we're never going to get mass adoption of this tech. And so I was like, I need some sort of platform where I can share my ideas and I have that scale of technology being able to talk to people. And that was really like the genesis behind when I ultimately finally did buy my CryptoPunk, this ape. I wrote that thread because I realized I was seeing the space a little bit differently than a lot of people were at the time, even crypto native people. And I was like, there's an opportunity for me to kind of have a voice to express my point of view that I think was interesting and that I think a lot of people weren't thinking about at the time. And it ultimately, my journey like culminated up until that point with writing that thread, which was then like the beginning of like the next chapter of the journey.
Yes. Okay. That's what I meant. You're coming out to the rest of the world. You had been in it for months at that point, or a couple months at least. You said that I maybe you said at the time, or I've heard you in interviews since talk about this, like that NFTs were just a good risk adjusted bet for you. Can you unpack that? Because to me, I'm like, what? Like, I feel like NFTs are the hardest thing in the world to like determine an intrinsic value for. And, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So especially, at the time, right? In December, November of 2020, my view was, okay, I think that this is really important technology. And let me try to find the projects that, and I read a lot on the art market. Like in that Q4 of 2020, I think I read like 3 or 4 books on the contemporary art market. Because at the time I was like, what is the closest, contemporary to NFTs? And it was the contemporary art market. And so I tried to understand, how it works, who like the institutional buyer is, right? And the institutional buyer of the contemporary art market is, your tier 1 museums, right? Like, if an artist, by the time an artist is in the MoMA, is part of the MoMA collection, like, the value of their work has gone up significantly. So it's like, okay, what do I need to find things that I think will be at the MoMA or the Met or, the Louvre 50 to 100 years from now and get in there before I think that they can find them. And so my thesis was, okay, if there is an NFT art movement, right? And at that time, it wasn't guaranteed that I thought CryptoPunks would be historically significant. There's like a bunch of stuff that I was collecting that I was like, this is early on-chain art that I think 50 to 100 years from now will be considered historically significant, so that if there is a wing at the MoMA that handles NFT art, I think these would be part of that collection. So to me, I was like, it was a good long-term play, right? And so that was one. But the other aspect of it was, coming from a finance background, I was trading publicly traded equities for 15 plus years before I really started going down the NFT rabbit hole. I take a look at, what attracted me to crypto originally, right? Is like, obviously the technology and the promise of it is great. So when you take a look at crypto and you take a look at optionality, right? And you take, one of the things that really attracted me to Bitcoin and Ethereum was that here you have this option that doesn't expire, right? So generally in traditional markets, when you buy an option, there's an expiration date, right? So you're
like a call or a put, like a literal option.
Yeah, when you buy a call or when you buy a call or a put, you literally are in a race against time. From the second you buy that, there's time decay, right? So, you could be right, but if you're off by a week, that's the difference between making a massive sum of money and losing money on it. So to me, one of the things I really liked about Ethereum and Bitcoin was like, all right, I could literally be wrong for 10 years, but if I'm right in that 11th year, if I still have the position, I'm effectively right? Because I held on to it. So at the time, I think Ethereum was around $500. It was either right below $500 or right above $500. And I was bullish on Ethereum. So I said, okay, thinking about the last cycle, and I remember in 2017, 2018, people would always be like, when Lambo, right? To kind of be like, oh, I want to make so much money that I can buy a Lamborghini. I said, I think this cycle is going to be a little bit different. And people will be saying, when CryptoPunk, right? I want to make so much money that I can buy a CryptoPunk. And so then when you take a look at assets priced in Ethereum, NFTs, and you take a look at real world assets, right? So when the stock market is at all-time highs, luxury homes, luxury cars, wine, luxury watches, all these things that are high value items are trading also at elevated prices because people have more wealth and they're going to spend it on ways to display that wealth and to enjoy that wealth. And so my thesis was that much the same way that you experienced that in the real world and in last cycle, the same thing would happen in the NFT market. So to me, it's like I was technically buying an option on an option, right? I was buying that second derivative so that if the price of Ethereum went up by 5x, my theory was that the price of NFTs, high value NFTs, would go up by multiples of that. And I think I called it the PPP price, or no, I don't know, something with convexity. I forgot the exact term that I named it, of how as the price of Ethereum would go up, the price of NFTs would go up at a faster rate because they're just so much more scarce. And so that's why when I came into the space, on a risk-adjusted basis, that was the best bet that I could make for my bankroll, right? If I was trying to put $100 million to work, obviously the market was too small at the time, but trying to put 100, 200K to work, to me, it was the best use of my cash.
That's fascinating. And I totally understand the how NFTs are levered ETH in many ways. I'm slow, and I need you to break down why ETH is more like an option rather than like an equity, where
right.
An equity doesn't expire.
Yeah. So for me, the reason why I saw it as an option is because you can make multiples of your money, like crypto in general, right? If I buy Apple stock, I'm not going to make 10x my money in Apple unless I hold it for 5 to 10 years, right? But and this is I guess VC investing in general, right? You're buying in, right? Any of these network token vals that come in at sub 100 million or even some above, right? As soon as they catch that flywheel effect, right, you start getting that massive growth curve, right, where it'll go from a 50 million val to a billion val because it finds product market fit, right?
You were looking at it in terms of return, what could the return be in the frame of time? Yeah. And it was more on par with something like an option where you're sort of levered and therefore have the bigger returns. Oh, that's fascinating. Damn, your mind. I've listened to a bunch of interviews with you now in leading up to this, and it's very fun to see how your mind works. Do you have anything right now? You mentioned reading 4 art books to understand the art market before you started making your bets in early NFTs. Is there anything like that right now where you're this is the next meta, this is what I'm reading books on the side to make me a better trader?
I'm not reading anything to make me a better trader. I think right now I'm focused on building what I'm focused. The reason why I started Admit One was because I want a community of people that is really interested in the same things that I am and focused on, bringing the future to now. I think right now I'm focused on building that community and building it out and, building what I think would be cool stuff to work on that I hope other people will find exciting. And, also understanding the fact that maybe some people don't get it right out the gate, right? And that's fine, right? Because for the same reason that when I bought my CryptoPunk, 16 short months ago, like people were, you're an idiot, right click save when it first happened. And, understanding that if the wisdom of the crowd thought that, if everyone thought that it was a good idea, then it'd already be in existence, right? So to me, I don't know. Let's see, what am I reading right now? I'm actually reading Snow Crash, right? I'm about halfway through Snow
Nice.
at the moment. And I'm reading a couple books on fashion and stuff on creative thinking. Those are probably like the things on my bookshelf at the moment.
I'm so eager down the line in this conversation to get into your fashion career and understand how that came to be, because it's very cool that you're into it, and I don't know what the dots are for that. You mentioned, I've heard you mention before that you had this mindset shift when you initially saw NFTs as this awesome risk-adjusted trade, as you just explained, and then you had this moment where you really realized there was something a lot more, and you seemed to just go all in, and that was really the genesis of realizing you were going to build a community and what we now have as Admit One. What was that moment? What was that flip where you realized, oh, this is even more than I originally thought?
So it happened when, and I cover this like in my manifesto. So for people that are super interested, it's at G.Money. There's a manifesto link. But like for me, I put CryptoPunks on billboards with Justin Aversano in March of 2021, March or April of 2020. The dates get so confusing to me. March or April of 2021. And we had like an opening party and we put 100 CryptoPunks on billboards in Miami. Then the next month we did them in New York and then in London. And we had our opening party in Miami. And I remember as I was walking around the party and just, I don't remember the exact conversation, but at that party, I was like, wow, like NFTs are going to be so much bigger than I originally thought. And I thought that they were going to be big right out of the gate. I just didn't realize how big that they would be, right? And I was like, this tech is so important and is going to be used by pretty much anybody coming in for digital ownership in the future, that every brand, celebrity, anybody that does any sort of commerce right now will have to look at the space at some point in the future. Now, I didn't know it would be in 5 months, 5 years or 30 years, right? But I was very adamant that it would come. And I was like, okay, I understand the space. And again, like up until that point, like I was, at one point, I think I had I had the largest chain on the largest loan on chain through NiftyFi, right? And it was a $25,000 loan. At the time, it was like a monstrous loan. And today that's like nothing, right? That's chump change for an NFT loan. But like, to me, it's like at that point, I was just trying to learn the technology so that I would understand it by the time the real players started coming in, I could be there to kind of help guide them. And that was really how I started operating when I was like, this is like an all-in moment where I could either watch from the sidelines or build something that I would think is really cool that could change the world.
And am I wrong, or was that the CryptoPunk billboards that you and Justin did had an interactive component where folks could scan and get an NFT or take a picture of the billboard and get access to the parties? Do I have that right?
No, so what it was is you can take a picture, a selfie of you in front of the billboard, and you can get like a commemorative NFT. And then we were distributing them, or Justin and his team were distributing them out to people that did it. So there was some sort of interactivity, but you also have to remember, like a year ago, like the tools for community were like almost non-existent, right? And even now they're still pretty rudimentary, but like it's way better now than it was like a year ago to like track wallets and, track like it was literally people DMing us on Twitter and then like sending us their wallet and sending it back, right?
Yeah, well, and that's what I want to flag is it was cool. I mean, it was a very early example of doing anything like that is how I've thought of it. And it's amazing to see how much we've evolved as a space in just a year, which is why when folks are like skeptical of NFTs, I'm like, we have the brightest some of the brightest minds in the world, like full-time building on this. Like, you don't think we're going to be able to solve some of these problems that you currently think are annoying?
Right. And to that point is, right, like a couple months after that at Bitcoin Miami in 2021, I reached out to POAP because I'm like, I want, like literally 2 days before the event, was like, okay, I want to do some sort of like physical scavenger hunt, right? For fun, like low risk, low entry. And I was put in touch with the team at POAP. They gave me a bunch of QR codes, and I hired a few models to stand outside of these different establishments within like a half a block of the convention center. And just like, all you needed to do was just like walk a half a block, collect the QR code and scan it, and you got like an NFT for just participating, right? And it was like, to me, it's just like, how do we mess around with this tech and do something really cool and fun? And I had a couple of people that reached out to me and tweeted about it afterwards, that the most fun thing that they did at that Bitcoin conference was like go to the like Panther Coffee, collect the POAP, and get like a $5 gift certificate for a cup of coffee, right? Like that, like, to me, it's like, how do you build that interactivity? And now we see that obviously going, to the next level, where a lot of these projects are throwing big parties, and all this stuff, because it's all community building. But like, really, it's like, I remember like, I think I had about 20 people show up each day, right, for that POAP, right? And it's like, those POAPs were all allow listed on the Admit One drop, right? And it was, all you really had to do was walk 1-2 blocks out of your way, take 10 minutes out of your time to do that, right?
And now you'd have 14 ETH, 13 ETH sitting in your pocket if you wanted it. Did you know at that time, when you were doing those POAPs at Bitcoin Miami, that it would tie to something like Admit One down the line? Like, did you have that plan already?
Yeah, like I knew that I wanted to build a community, and I knew I wanted to build it slowly and organically, and kind of show other people how you would be able to do that. I think in my original tweet, I think I said something, I saw a screenshot that said something like, if you collect all three, there will be like, value to it, right? And so the people that did collect all three got the first 11 Admit One passes. They got airdropped those. They were the only people that didn't have to actually do anything to claim it, because they went out of their way 3 consecutive days in a row to kind of support me at the very beginning. Like, right? Like, compared to where I am now, I think I had a few thousand followers, and it was just really me doing something cool and fun for people that like believed in Gmoney at that point.
You obviously were successful before you entered the NFT space, and you love trading, and your mind works very much in that way. You traded equities, as you mentioned. Why do you want to build a community? Like, why not do what you do and make money, and why get into this at all?
Because I see like the opportunity out there to do something really cool that like affects the world on a really grand scale, right? Like, trading, it's, for lack of a better term, it can be very unfulfilling, right? Like, you're just watching numbers go up and down all day, sitting in front of a screen. I think, community building, as I've gotten older, I realize how much like the human connection means to me personally, and how much I enjoy interacting with humans. And, and that's community, right? That's literally the basis and essence of community. And for me, like, what I'm doing now is way more fulfilling beyond, the monetary value of it. Is like, I think that, I'm hoping that like I can affect the world and leave it in a better place than when I came in. And I just see an opportunity for me to kind of push that narrative forward and push the tech forward and adoption forward by doing what I'm doing, rather than just sitting on the sidelines. Or, I could have definitely faded into oblivion, and, nobody would have ever heard from Gmoney like a year ago again, and I would have been perfectly fine. Right. But like, to me, it's like, I'm like, okay, I see like what I think could be really cool version of the future, and I can help make that a reality. So like, why not?
Do you still trade? Obviously you trade NFT and NFTs and things, but do you trade in the Web2 world?
No, I like don't. I mean, I will say, like, I look at prices, right, of like the stock market every once in a while, but I don't trade. I don't have time to trade. I don't even trade NFTs, right? Like I generally just buy and hold. Like the only sales I really have, if you look at my wallet, it's probably because someone like really wants something, or somebody really wants to, I've been asked to sell stuff, and, at prices, and, it's just, to me, it's like, I'm more of a buy and hold person. And I just don't think it's a good use of my time trying to sit there and, buy like the next NFT drop and like try to flip it. It's just like, I don't find it fulfilling, right? It's
Yep.
like I find the work that I'm doing much more fulfilling, and I think that it has just a better effect on the overall like ecosystem.
So let's get into what Admit One is. I feel like I saw a lot of comparisons to Proof when you launched. Do you think of it as an alpha group?
No, I don't. I think of it as getting a community together that is very like-minded, right? Like I have two things that I'm really focused on is how do we disrupt current industries and how do we increase adoption, right? And so like one of, and how have I been doing that personally over the last year and a half is I've invested in close to 100 startups in the crypto space in the last year and a half. And, I've worked with companies like Adidas to help them come into the space. And I think that increases adoption, right? So to me, I've been working on that, solo for the last year and a half. And, as I have been evolving in the space and my notoriety has been growing, as I talk to potential partners and I talk to, founders that I invest in is like, yeah, they want to access my community because they know people that generally follow me and are interested in what I have to do. That, those are the type of people that they want within their communities. Right. And so to me, it was just like this great synergy of like, all right, I can now take my vision that I've been working on extensively for the last year and a half and kind of bring other people that think similarly. Right. I think one of the benefits has been like, I didn't see it as an alpha group, but there has been alpha shared in the Discord, right? We have a token data Discord where, yesterday, I always post on Sundays the things I'm thankful for, right? A gratitude post. And we had a discussion within our Discord yesterday, and we started like a daily gratitude thread that like was sparked by other people in the community, right? Like people have been bringing alpha to the group without me necessarily being like, all right, like, I got a hot tip that like we should be minting this, like, because that's not really what I want it to be about. I'm sure there will be alpha. There's plenty of smart people within the group that are in every part of the ecosystem that I think will bring alpha to the table and create an awesome community. But to me, when I started it, it wasn't like, okay, like this is the next hot mint. Like that's not what it's about. I'm sure that there will be a lot of access and a lot of good things to come out of it, but that was never the intent.
When you made a number of, I think, very interesting strategic decisions that maybe you can speak on sort of as a whole, and I mentioned before we hopped on here that you did do an interview on your own podcast that's now been renamed Admit One, where you talked through some of the tactical decisions, and I don't want to duplicate that too much. If folks want to hear all the tactical side, they can go listen to that episode. We'll link to it. But I will flag, like, you did a free mint. You dropped during a huge bear market and maybe speak to how you thought about the mechanics of this holistically.
Yeah. So, I wanted to, we spent a lot of time thinking about how we were going to distribute it and, what we would price it at, how we would distribute it, right? We went through like Dutch auctions, English auctions, free mints, allow lists, like whatever it was, free. And obviously on an English auction or Dutch auction, like everybody pays like a different price and like, what happens because of that. And ultimately we decided to settle on free mint because like, and I bring this up in the manifesto as well is like,
Yep.
One is, I want the community to be completely aligned with me, right? It's like, I'm not doing this as a cash grab. I want people that are aligned with me that, I get a portion of royalty, but like, if I don't create value there, there's no value to be had. It's not like I can just rug and like walk away. I wanted the market to decide what it was worth. I didn't want to say, I think this is worth this, right? And then people would be buying it on, my belief of what I think it's worth. I mean, it started trading like where it's trading right now is like way higher than I anticipated it to be trading. I thought it would, probably be settling at like 2 to 5 ETH, right? So I'm obviously very humbled and honored that people have that much faith in me and belief in the things that I'm working on. And, like that doesn't change the fact that I plan on executing no matter what the price of it is, right? And so I have a lot of cool things that I've been working on to that effect. And then finally, I would say that, just as an homage to CryptoPunks, right? CryptoPunks were free to claim. And so, it's like, to me, it's like, I think that that's what makes the CryptoPunk community so beautiful, is that it was like, such this like immaculate conception almost, right? Of, all you had to do was pay the price of the transaction fee, and, you were able to hold it, right? And so that to me is like all those things. I think that like, by doing so, I was also able to include people that otherwise might not be able to afford it, right? It's a little more inclusive, and, not everybody has 1 ETH or 3 ETH to spend on a brand new mint for a community that they don't know. So I think it allowed me to have a more diverse group of people, which I think ultimately leads to more creativity, which leads to better ideas.
And you were very intentional about how you curated the community. I think 700 or approximately of the spots, the allow list spots, were given to folks who held one of your POAPs from one of these previous events. And then 300 were like hand-picked community members that you really wanted to be in the community. And I think you have like 59% women. Like you've made a real effort there.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think that comes down to, in my view, is right, like everybody has a different perspective in life, right? Whether you're man, woman, non-binary, right? Like you have your unique perspective. And the more perspectives we get, that's where you get that explosion of ideas that really leads to innovation. And that's really what I would love to foster in the community, because I'm only one person. And one of the reasons why I love talking to anybody about NFTs, like outside of the space, and I try to get them to understand it, is because, I can only speak about NFTs in like verticals that like I totally understand. But, if I can help somebody explain it in a vertical I have no idea, then they will start turning their heads around like, oh, like what if we did it like this? And I'm like, I didn't even know that was a possibility, right? But now like we have another potential use case for the tech. And that really is like where the beauty of innovation comes from.
Mm-hmm. Does it make you nervous that it's at 13 ETH right now?
I mean, I'm humbled, right? Like it really, I think the expectations are higher. I have my vision. I do think long term, I think there will be a lot of value accrual to the community. But yeah, I mean, I think with I've spoken to enough founders at this point where I think you're going to always be nervous, because you always want to, everybody wants to set a low bar, and then, under promise and over deliver is how I've always operated. So when the bar starts becoming high, I feel like you start feeling the pressure, whether it's self-inflicted or not, right?
Totally. I have so much empathy for project founders, especially if you go in with a free mint and then it gets bid up and you're like, I had nothing to do with this. Like I didn't tell you it should be 13 ETH. I think you have a lovely community though, given that you've handcrafted it. So that it seems like you'll have an understanding group. With this launch, I believe, you'll correct me if I'm wrong about this, your marketplace went live, the Admit One marketplace. I'm fascinated by this. My understanding, and then I want you to explain better, is that this is ultimately going to be like a Gmoney curated marketplace. Right now, it holds your Admit One tokens. It holds, I think, your brick game, which, by the way, I played for like 3 hours yesterday. I was like, oh, this is good research for the interview. And I literally spent like 3 hours listening to podcasts and playing Brick Breaker. And maybe a couple other NFTs, the Adidas into the Metaverse NFTs within your ecosystem. But down the line, it will be like a curated selection of NFTs for purchase on the marketplace. Correct? Tell me.
Yeah, so it's called Gmoney Market. You can go to gmoney.market to check it out. And, when I take a look at the real world and I take a look at Web 2, and, the future of commerce is curation, right? It's always been there, right? Like you go to a department store, not because that's the only place you can buy your favorite brands, but it's because you go to a department store, it saves you time, right? Like or even a boutique, right? You like the buyer. You like the clothing, the selection of clothing that they provide for you, so that it saves you time and hassle and decision making. And so, then when you fast forward that to like the Web 2 world, right? And you take a look at, I don't know the exact stats, but I'm fairly certain that in 1998, 99, eBay probably had some of the most transaction volume on the internet, right? Because you can go on there and buy anything on eBay. And today, there's only certain products that you would buy on eBay. And the same with Amazon, right? Like there's a whole breadth of products, but you don't buy everything from either of those sites. And they do a lot of volume. But at the end of the day, if you're a brand and you want to sell your consumer on a certain experience, you want to control what that experience is like, right? And that's why every company has their own e-commerce website, because they are curating that experience for their clients. And so to me, I think the future isn't on a super site or a mega store, right? People want very curated experiences that pertain to exactly what they want. And we see that, through brands, through department stores in the real world, but then also, websites that cater to specific things, whether it be like sporting goods or electric scooters or, cars, whatever it is, people will go to that specific vertical because they want that curated experience. You don't want to, Google electric scooter and then, it's like a toy or something, right? And that happens a lot on the superstore sites. And so I think for me, I think the future of Web3 goes that way as well. And so it's like, I just want to start preparing for it, right? And it's like, I want to not only have that, but then also you as a consumer, if you want to buy a Gmoney branded product, if you go to a major site, you have to worry about like a scam collection popping up or worrying about maybe you bought the wrong one. It's like, if you just go directly to my marketplace, because there's no other option. You can only buy the ones that are listed, right? So you don't have to necessarily worry about that authenticity, which I think will probably become more and more of a thing in the future, right?
Well, let me push back, which is, I think one of the reasons that Amazon gained the traction it did was because it was providing curated experiences. Even back like when it was just a bookstore, it could do what a physical bookstore couldn't do, which is see your buying history and then present you additional options based on your buying history. So right. Scenarios where marketplaces can look into your wallet, see what you own, and recommend other things you might want could play better on marketplaces that have everything.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I mean, that's fine. And I think it definitely will happen, right? The beautiful thing about blockchain is that it's all public info. So I don't have to be a member of a certain marketplace in order to kind of benefit from it, right? So I definitely agree with you there. But I think I'm thinking of it more from a brand perspective, right? Like Nike, like you can't buy a Gucci purse on Amazon, right? You can't buy, I mean, maybe now you can buy some Nike stuff, but like there's no, like most brands, and this was always the issue with Amazon, was no brands wanted to sell their product on Amazon, right? It took a long time and it took a huge fight for them to do it, right? Like even now, if you buy, you go on eBay for Nike sneakers, like you could be buying fakes. You really don't know, right? Like if I go to Nike.com, I'm buying real sneakers, right? That these are from the manufacturer. So I think you're going to run into that where the brands want to give you a very curated experience that you can't get on a super site because, I don't want to be selling right next to my competitors when I already have you as a captive customer, right? So I think they all have their time and their places, but I do think as a brand and as brands start coming into the space, they're going to want they're going to want to give their clientele their own curated experience specific to that brand. And then just like in the real world, you can go into the store, buy that pair of sneakers, and then you can do whatever you want with it. You can resell it on eBay. You can go to the Real. You can give it away. You can throw it away, right? It's up to you because you technically own it. And I firmly believe that that's where we're headed in the future.
We're seeing, and we've been seeing for years now, this macro trend of pulling away from institutions and towards individuals, right? It's like Joe Rogan does way crazier numbers than CNN does at this point, and we trust individuals more than we're trusting these big institutions. And it feels like that's what you're tapping into with your marketplace, is you as an individual creator that people trust, being able to curate experiences that help tastemaker for folks. Do you see yourself as a tastemaker?
Yeah, to an extent, right? Like I think that it happens. Like it happens to me all the time where people are like, "Oh, what NFT should I buy?" Right? And it's like, again, that turns into that curation, right? That's an aspect that I could turn on at some point where it's like, okay, here's like the Gmoney curated corner where these are the NFT projects I like, right? And I put them in a place for you where you're buying the exact project that I'm talking about. And maybe there's a curation fee that goes on top of that, right? Like that's something long-term that, again, I think that that's where the world goes. I don't need to go in that direction right away because I already have other things that I'm working on. But I know it's an option. It's like a lever to pull at some point. But I agree with you. I think that there is, I think because of the way the world is set up today, there's a lot of mistrust in brands that we used to trust. And because of that, the people that are super authentic, that speak to their community, that people trust, like Joe Rogan's that great example, right? Like, some people go to him for the news instead of like CNN, right? Because they know that he's going to give it to you straight, whether you agree with him or not, right? Like he's not going to be sitting there trying to tell you that, this color is not red, right? When it obviously is. So I think that it just comes from the world that we live in, and people want to find those people that they trust, that they believe are authentic, that aren't trying to necessarily lie to them about what they're doing, right?
Can you give us a taste of what folks should expect at the Gmoney market in the future?
I mean, really at the outset, it's really just to be focused on all products that I'm associated with, right? That I have my name on, which is why those I guess now 4 projects, because Adidas also did an airdrop over on Friday, that, things that I'm involved in, so that if you're a fan of Gmoney and interested in the projects that I'm working on, you don't have to worry about going to like an OpenSea and worrying about, you type in Gmoney and maybe you buy something that's a fake, right? So to me, it's kind of a way to combat that, fake collections popping up and stuff like that. And, to ultimately give people, and you don't have to pay a transaction fee, right? A marketplace fee for things that are listed, right? So you get access to all the major exchanges, the listings on there, and if you buy them, you obviously have to buy each exchange's fee that they charge. But ones that get listed natively, you don't have to pay that 2.5% transaction fee, which I think is pretty cool. And again, long term, I think that we're going to see, I think we already saw it. So I used Reservoir to kind of build the white label solution for it. And they've built a couple marketplaces. I think they built one for Nouns now, and they've been working with other projects. And I think we probably see that long term, right? Again, I think it helps combat that authenticity and fake collections popping up. And it really helps against, I think, the scamming of people when maybe they end up buying a fake NFT.
You you front ran my next question, which was going to be about the technology underpinning this. It sounds like Reservoir, I know RARIBLE is also doing bespoke marketplace or, white label marketplaces for folks. Meta Angels did that. I'm fascinated by the future of marketplaces, and everybody smart that I'm talking to is definitely betting on this fragmented marketplace, unique marketplaces for different genres of things, different curators, I guess, in your case. So, technical question, I suppose. Why did you go with Reservoir?
I think that they were really smart guys. They gave me a working marketplace, and obviously we needed to tweak it super fast, really, really fast. And they were like, yeah, we'll iterate on it and we'll help you get it to the design that you want. But they have the infrastructure, and we spoke to a couple different people about doing our own marketplace. And one of the things was I like how quickly they worked, how well they understood it, the entire thing that I wanted. But then also I think providing users that access to other marketplaces, right? Where it's when you go on OpenSea, you can't see what's on LooksRare, right? I'm not sure if you can see what's on OpenSea from LooksRare, but it's I want to aggregate all marketplace data so that, if you are just interested in buying an Admit One token and you want to get the best price, you go to Gmoney Market, right? Because that will aggregate all the data from everywhere. Whereas sometimes you see it trades a little higher here and it trades a little lower there because people don't realize, I could have just gone there, because there's no one aggregated center, right? And so I think that that to me is super interesting. It's how can you provide these extra little perks, right? That you won't get on OpenSea or LooksRare or any of the other major marketplaces that you can there, because I want to create the best experience for people that are buying all things Gmoney. And whereas those marketplaces are optimizing for different things.
If you're starting on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. This is your tool to unlock the world of DeFi and NFTs without giving up custody over your private keys. MetaMask is both a secure in-browser wallet and also a secure bridge for your hardware wallet so that you can connect to any Web3 enabled website. You can now trade tokens with any DEX or aggregator. MetaMask Swap gathers real-time pricing information across the DeFi exchange ecosystem, allowing you to select your best price while getting all of the MetaMask benefits of self-custody, lower gas costs, and increased transaction success rates. MetaMask also has a fantastic mobile wallet, which I use while I'm out and about. And I use it to collect POAPs, NFTs, and use it for all my DeFi things while I'm away from home. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask, you gotta try it out. Download MetaMask for desktop and mobile at metamask.io, or load up your Ledger, Trezor, Keystone, or Lattice hardware wallets so that they too can get into Web3. It's increasingly obvious that everything will become tokenized, and NFT marketplaces needs robust financial reporting, performance analysis, and the peace of mind that they are compliance ready. GILDED's NFT Ops is a one-stop financial reporting solution for growing NFT platforms. GILDED has developed marketplace-specific modules to track the financial performance of NFT creators, including revenue tracking, collection metrics, royalty payments, and revenue share. Customers of NFT Ops gain full access to accounting tools and powerful APIs for custom integrations that simplify operations, streamline reporting, and produce tax-ready data. So no wonder why so many top brands like CoinMarketCap, Gitcoin, Nifty's, and POAP trust GILDED to automate complex reporting workflows. Visit gilded.finance/bankless to learn more.
Let's talk about your foray into fashion. I alluded to this earlier. Obviously, Adidas is one of the projects on your bespoke marketplace because you really were instrumental in bringing them into the space. How did you end up in fashion? Have you always been a fashion fan? Talk to me about this journey.
Yeah, so when as I look into my background in life, right? Like I remember when I used to doodle a lot in school, like during class, whatever, and I would like mess around with logos and like kind of like always. I guess I was always like consumer focused, right? Even when I was trading, even when I was generally a generalist, right? So I knew a little bit about a lot of different sectors and a lot of different companies. I always like to say I was 10 feet deep on 1,000 names, right? As opposed to being 1,000 feet deep on 10 names. And so one of the sectors that I really focused on was consumer discretionary. And that is, like your consumer facing stocks, right? So even up until last year, my best trade of my entire career was when I remember I was interning in New York City going into my senior year of college, and I was sitting on the subway and I look around and I see that everybody had these white headphones in their ears. And at the time they had, white lines as well, because we were still in the wired world. And that was Apple, right? Everybody had the original iPod, right? And I remember Apple stock, I think it was trading at around $10. I bought the $20 calls for about 62 cents, and I sold them for $49. That's like, that was like an insane ROI in 18 months. It was about, because I purchased the options. I was in a race against time as far out as I could, and something that I thought it'd be able to hit. And then I was like, wow, I'm like, this is really cool. Like I like that was just for me being observant and spotting consumer trends. And I remember a few years later, I don't know if you're too young to remember this, but there was a company called True Religion brand jeans.
Yeah, I remember True Religion.
That became very popular in 2004, 2005. And it was a publicly traded stock. And I remember the most fashionable girlfriends of mine living in New York were always wearing them. And I was like, oh, these things are going to become popular because New York catches trends generally earlier than the rest of the country and probably most of the world. And so I ended up buying some True Religion stock at around $4 or $5. It eventually ended up getting acquired for, I think, around $25 to $28 a few years later. But like, to me, it's like I was always super observant, especially on consumer journeys and consumer trends. And it was just something that always interests me, right? I think living in New York City, it is, even though it's very finance focused and real estate focused, it's also very fashion forward, right? And there is like a New York fashion scene. So I think I was just like naturally around it. It was something that had interested me from a young age, but I probably shelved it because I was also interested in finance and numbers and the stock market. And that always fascinated me as well. And yeah, and when Adidas came to me, it was just, I was like, yeah, like, of course, one, I want to work with Adidas, but, on top of that, it's like, Adidas and Nike are, two of like the most culturally significant brands on the planet, right? It doesn't matter what your age is, how much money you make, that these brands, what these two brands are, and that they're cool, right? So to me, that was like super important when I started talking to them as well. So, it's like, it's been like a fun and wild ride, but like, it definitely wasn't something that's like, oh, like I'm going to focus on fashion. It was just something that I think I was always interested in.
Am I right though that in addition to Adidas, like you've made some big investments in a number of other fashion brands, and that you folks who are launching within the fashion space, within the virtual world, sort of think of you as a good investor in that. Am I right?
Yeah, well, I'm a member of Red DAO, so I invested in a bunch of fashion startups as well, and like I think one of the things that I find super interesting is as we move from like crypto and crypto culture to mainstream culture, one of the things we have to focus on is like, how do we make it cool, right? Like how do we make it so that when Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, Travis Scott, when these people that are arguably some of the coolest people on the planet learn about an NFT project, they're not like, ooh, like that's, I don't like that. Or like, whatever, whether it's the artwork or the vibe or whatever it is, right? Like we need, in order for crypto to really go mainstream, and, I firmly believe that NFT tech is what is the Trojan horse that takes crypto mainstream. So we need to make NFTs cool. We need to make sure that the coolest people on the planet want to be involved in the space. And I think a lot of that, is involving like the coolest brands and people on the planet and helping them execute on the vision that they want.
A lot of brands that have entered this space, I'm trying to figure out the right way to phrase it because I don't want to overstate it, but like haven't necessarily fared that well. Even the folks that are kind of doing it right. So I'll say in the short term, maybe they haven't fared well. Pepsi was met with a decent amount of cringe. I would say I think Adidas entered really well with your help, and then there was FUD around it's not happening quickly enough, and then people were disappointed in various ways. Like, why do you think brands struggle so much when they enter the space or at some point in their lifespan of being in the space?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's the nature that they're massive, right? These are huge companies that they when you're running a multi-billion-dollar business, you can't like pivot and be like, oh, well, free mints are popular now. Like we're going to just drop everything we've been working on for the last 12 months and just do a free mint, right? Like I think when you're a startup, right, and you have a team of 3 to 5 people, of course you can pivot overnight. You can pivot in an hour. But when you're a massive company, not only do you have to answer to people higher up, but I'm sure there's some cost benefit analysis and stuff like that. So as much as like some of these companies are moving at the speed of light for their company, it's still really, really slow in the world of crypto and NFTs, right? So I think that's part of it, right? And it's also like an entirely new business model, right? Like a year ago at this time, if you were to walk into like a room full of CMOs or C-suite level people, they probably would have laughed at you if you were talking to them about the metaverse, right? Like there's only like a handful of people that would not have laughed at you, that would have taken you seriously. But I think now at this point, we're at a point where every company has to have some sort of metaverse strategy, right? What does their part look like in a digital future, right? And a year ago, they weren't having that conversation. So I think part of it is just because these companies are so old, or so large, not so old. It's that they're so large that, it can't just be, oh, well, I decided we're going to do this. We're going to move forward. There's, a chain of command of people that have to be those decision makers. But then also like, they're also learning it as well. Like we're all learning it, right? Like we're trying to figure out what the best business model is. And I think when you have that much brand equity at stake, you have to move slower, right? Like it's much riskier if you move faster and mess up than if you move a little bit slower and kind of make sure you're doing it right.
Is part of the problem that there's still this expectation that like we'll all become millionaires off NFTs? And does there need to be a reframing of like, eventually we're all going to hold NFTs, not to make us rich, but because we want access to the cool Adidas room, and it's going to be for utility, and you're not necessarily going to make huge money. I'm not trying to say you're not going to make money on your Adidas NFT. I'm using that generically.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, there's an expectations reset that's probably going to come at some point, right? Because like, that model of, hey, like I, spent X and I expect like 1,000X worth of value. Like, I mean, it's just not sustainable, right? Like, let's be honest. Like, you can't get anything in the real world of value for free. Like people always say, you get what you pay for, right? If you want like a ton of free product, it's probably not high quality product, right? And that's something that people need to be cognizant of and understand that, things take time and investment. And, as large as these companies are when they're coming into the space, like there's not like an infinite pool of capital that they can dump into a new market, right? Because at the end of the day, they're looking at their bottom line as well. And, every startups as well, startups probably even more so because they don't have the money to burn. So I think that there will be that reset of expectations. But frankly, like up until this point, right? Like the whole reason we're talking about NFTs is because they went up in value so much, so quickly. If not, we probably wouldn't be talking about NFTs right here, right now. So I do think that there's a reset in expectations that are coming. And, that's something that the industry is going to have to come to terms with that's not there at the moment.
And likely will come with the mainstreaming of it. Like these early folks who are in it are obviously more heavily weighted toward the speculators who want the money. And in theory, the next wave of people come in because they actually want the value they're getting because it's a ticket to their Taylor Swift concert or whatever the case may be. And they're not expecting it to pump to the moon.
Right.
You talked about, obviously, your the two pillars, your two big goals being to disrupt industries and to increase adoption of the technology. I'm curious if you have a different way you would describe the Gmoney brand, or here's your high level thesis of the kind of world you want to bring into effect as you disrupt these industries and as you increase adoption of the technology.
Yeah. So, I think it's different because like I'll meet somebody that like comes to me with like a cool new idea that I hadn't thought of. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. All right. Now I want to figure out how I can help you and how we can work together and like bring around that disruption, right? So, I mean, I have my ideas of, the specific verticals that I am going to be focused on. And, a lot of it is because I've had conversations with people and I'm just like, all right, nobody's doing it. So I'm just going to do it, right? And I think it's cool. Hopefully other people think it's cool. And, then it starts being adopted by more and more people and it leads to that ultimate disruption. I don't say like I have like one formula because it really comes down to sometimes I talk to somebody in a vertical. I'm like, yeah, I don't really know how you can use NFTs. And then they hit me up like a day or two later. It's like, so I was thinking this, what do you think? I'm like, I mean, that sounds really cool. Like if you want to work on it, like I support it, like do it, but yeah, I wouldn't say that there's like a direct formula that, like for me, it comes down to, and I said this in the manifesto, is like do dope shit with dope people, right? Yeah. It's like, good ideas and good people will yield good results.
I had one nitpick with you didn't publish a manifest, or you didn't publish a roadmap. You published like a list of values, which I loved. It was like long and it was funny and it was great. The Joe's Pizza thing though, I gotta say, Joe's Pizza has become a little bit, I feel like, too touristy, and now sometimes it's a little floppy. It's not as like crispy bottomed as I'd like.
So I think I like going to the one in the West Village and the one in Union Square. Those are my two favorites.
I'm in FiDi, and the FiDi Joe's can be a little hit or miss.
I've been to FiDi, the one in FiDi a couple times. I mean, the good news is that like it's literally like the only thing open in FiDi. So I feel like the quality.
Hey, don't you talk bad about my hood.
No, I mean I lived in FiDi for 2 years. It was honestly it was my least favorite neighborhood in Manhattan. It wasn't for me. But I think that's why the quality in FiDi is probably not as high as the other ones because there's less competition.
Yeah, I'm not. People hate small talk in podcasts, so I'm not going to bore people by fighting you on this continuously. But when we hop off, I'll give you my 5 thoughts. Well, I know, just even from a morals and a principles perspective, like it feels like you have a really good understanding of the importance of decentralization and the open metaverse. Beyond just talking points, like that's something you really feel to your core. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when we always see these dystopian futures, right? It's always like a walled garden, right? It's always like, oh, there's some central source that you can't piss off, or like your digital future is gone. And, it's like, and I know I've had extensive conversations with 6529 on this and other prominent figures in the NFT space, where it's like, we need like those property rights in a digital future, right? And having a centralized ledger does not allow for that, because at some point somebody, it's up to one person to decide who wins and who loses, right? And that shouldn't be the case, because then you're talking about human rights and human freedoms that we as Americans feel are like inalienable, right? That it literally says that in the Constitution. And so that to me is like why I feel so strongly about decentralization, is like, I want all these brands and all these people of influence in the real world to come into the space on decentralized rails. Whatever they do from there it's totally and completely up to them. But I want them to do something where we're not at the mercy of some centralized authority that can censor whoever they choose just because your values don't necessarily align. And that to me is like my fundamental thesis for why I'm doing a lot of the things that I'm doing.
I loved your conversation with 6529, and I also listened to your conversation with the NOR team, and I thought that there were some through lines there that I found interesting. I've been personally like railing against land sales as a metaverse strategy, and I had an episode recently with like a land-like asset gaming expert who talked about why it's a strange strategy. I think 6529 put it really well, of like, it's weird to have an open metaverse where it costs $10,000 to get into to get into it, because you have to buy this piece of land. I'm curious your feelings on land sales as a metaverse strategy, because it's the dominant one right now, it feels like.
Yeah, no, I think like some of these metaverses will have historic value. I don't know how many at this point, like probably like the first ones will have historic value, right? Just because it was like one of the first, or, there was a community that formed around it. But as I spent more time, like thinking about and interacting with, the metaverse, land in the metaverse, right? And the analogy I always like to use is Instagram, right? It's like, if each successive profile on Instagram costs more expensive than the last one, like Instagram would have never scaled. Like nobody would have ever gone on Instagram, right? Like what makes an Instagram account valuable is the content that the owner puts on there, right? What makes a concert hall epic? Like what makes Madison Square Garden such a special place? What makes CBGB such a special place in New York City? Not because of their location. Their location is irrelevant. It's like the moments that happen there is what make the place special, right? So then when you think about it in the metaverse, right? Like what's going to make one piece of land more valuable than the other? It's going to be the experience, right? The historicness of whatever happens there that gives it the value. So like, as I spend more and more time thinking about it, is like, I mean, metaverse land is infinite, right? Like all you need is computing power. So why are we creating scarcity? Now, in some games, I understand why scarcity exists, right? Like if you have a game and it's part of the map and like how the rules of how you play the game, that's fine. But like, should there be scarcity in something that like, if anybody has access to, right? It should be like almost like public land where you can come and go as you please. But if you want to create your experience, you have a place to do that. But then also if you want to customize it, like then you either put in your own sweat equity or you hire an architect or whatever it is. But like getting that actual parcel shouldn't really matter, right? Because like ultimately, like I can just send you a link and then you just go to my metaverse land, right? So as I spend more and more time thinking about it, like over the last year, it's been like, yeah, like digital scarcity on land is kind of bullshit, right? Like it's fine if it's within the confines of a game and those are the rules of that game, but like overall, like, it should be free, right? Like, and I think the Instagram model makes the most sense to me, just because like that's something where like, if I had to pay $500 for an Instagram account right now, like nobody would ever do it, right? It just doesn't
Facebook
make
is free
sense.
and always will be. That was like, the golden age of me being on Facebook. I just remember seeing that tagline every day, and that's what allows the network effects to build up, which is why you have a game like Roblox that's so popular. And it's very strange. And once that switch went off for me too, I was like, God, like how is this the current paradigm is to do these land sales? You're beholden to rewarding the people who can afford it rather than the people who are creating the most value, which may not be the same people.
Exactly.
As we close here, I do want to talk to you a little bit about Puerto Rico. I visited Puerto Rico and had just the best time and met just some of the most incredible people who are building in Web3, artists who are native to Web3, a number of whom are now making money off NFTs, who were first introduced to the concept because of Metaverso, which is a conference you co-hosted and really brought about in Puerto Rico. When did you move to the island? And would love to hear you just tell folks a little bit about what the scene is like there.
Yeah, I moved to Puerto Rico in April of 2017, and I've been living here full time since then. And, I love it. It's been amazing to watch the crypto community grow and blossom, especially in the last, I'd say two and a half years. And it's been really good. I think that there's been a lot of amazing and smart people moving down here that are doing amazing things for crypto and now like being part of the community, right? And that was like the genesis for starting Metaverso, right? It's like here I saw this technology that was changing so many people's lives in the creator economy, like in the world at large. And it's like, how can I help educate, locals, right, to take advantage of this tech? Because, this is, like minimum wage here is below the United States, even though we are a US territory. And it's like, how can these people use this tech for their benefit, right? And so that was really the genesis of it. And like, a lot of times, even in Admit One, the people that were included on the list were people that attended Metaverso. And there were a lot of Puerto Ricans that attended, artists as well as locals. And, I've gotten some messages from a few people of how like that, they changed, like they sold it, but like that money they're using to fund other initiatives and things that they're working on, and how it affected their lives in a positive manner. And like that to me is like a great, like I feel great about that because I know I'm helping empower locals that are putting themselves out there and want to learn this new tech, who will then go to their communities and empower others as well.
It struck me being there that there are a number of reasons that NFTs and crypto make a ton of sense. Like it makes sense that Puerto Ricans would be adopting this technology, and there's a huge art scene natively, and there's other things that I get into in this documentary that will be coming out here pretty shortly. And that it was funny because when you look at the coverage of crypto in Puerto Rico, like it's almost exclusively crypto colonizers. Like it's got this kind of very negative framing. And what felt frustrating to me about that, then going and meeting with people like Juan Salgado, who I know you know, and Pedro Cruz and Christina, who's an artist down there, like is it ends up erasing all of the amazing work that local Puerto Ricans are doing because they only focus on these outsiders who are coming in. And do you share that feeling? Like, do you feel frustrated ever seeing the media coverage around the crypto scene in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just limited to the crypto scene. I think it's just all people that are moving down here for that incentive, right? And a lot of, and I think this is just endemic of the media in general, where there is a lot of focus on the negative because negative headlines get way more clicks and coverage than positive headlines, right? Like the feel-good stories aren't generally as well clicked on, right? As well read as the feel bad stories. So it does get frustrating, but I just know that I'm doing things and I have the best intentions, and the people that I interact with, hopefully have nothing but good things to say about that interaction and how I've been able to help them. And that's all I can do. And just, I think the community that's being fostered down here is one where we help each other and help one another and all grow, right? Like, Pedro and Juan are two amazing examples where, these guys are great and they're beacons of light within their communities. And they're, by helping them, I'm helping their communities that they can then go out and educate. Like Pedro's an amazing example. He ran the hackathon for Metaverso, and he's running a boot camp, 2 boot camps this summer with a hackathon at the end. And that's all geared towards local Puerto Ricans, some of them to understand crypto, like if you don't know anything, and then some of them for programmers and devs to help the local dev scene become more up to date on crypto tech. So to me, the coverage sucks, right? Like it's sad that that's what's getting chosen to be displayed, but I think ultimately it's just really keep our heads down and keep on doing the next right thing, and hopefully at some point that coverage changes to one of more positivity than negativity.
Well, I'm hoping that my project, it'll hopefully bring light to some of the awesome things that are happening on the island. Because again, I was just so impressed by everything that's being built and the people and the artists. And so again, I've got to plug it, coming out later this month. We'll hopefully highlight some of that.
Amazing.
G, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on. This is a blast. Excited to see what the future of Admit One holds. And I just really appreciate you taking this time during kind of your busy launch period.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you reaching out, wanting to have that discussion. So yeah, I'm really excited with everything that I'm building. I think the community is amazing, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool. And we will link to your manifesto, which I really recommend people check out because I think it speaks a lot to how you're thinking about things, and that Admit One episode where you break down some of the tactical pieces as well.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.